Well, good afternoon. We'll see who are the real hardcore pipeline people and who can stay awake after lunch looking at graphs and metrics and data. This has been an ongoing issue. What we're talking about here is meaningful metrics, and that's come about over the last couple of years from a number of different places. You know, NTSB's even made recommendations about meaningful metrics in a variety of issues. Certainly the public is interested in what does the data really tell us and how can we drill down deep enough in it to get some meaningful stuff out of it. So we have three of us speaking today. I'm going to start it off kind of from the public viewpoint. I spend a lot of time looking at data. That's why I squint a lot and can't see. Then Alan's from PHMSA is going to talk about some of the new efforts PHMSA is doing. They've unleashed a whole new natural gas pipeline visualization system that I was looking at yesterday, and I love the way you can compare individual operators. And then Jim Donahue from the Canadian Energy Pipeline Association is going to talk about some of the way they're using measurables or metrics or indicators or whatever we want to call them in some of their internal operations, and also some of their hopes for what they hope to accomplish in the next few years. So their bios are all in your packet, so we're not going to go through that, but you can look them up. So I'm going to start it off just on this talk about meaningful metrics. Indicators, you know, what's the point? Why do we want to do this? It takes a lot of effort to try to decipher the data, so why do we want to do this? And you know, if you look at, there was a discussion this morning about safety management systems, and this graphic here actually almost describes safety management systems about, you know, you develop a plan, you go out and you do the plan, then you check to see if the plan is working, and then you change things that aren't working to improve it, and then you repeat over and over again. The metrics provide trend lines so for the check part of it, so you know whether you're getting better or not. Without some kind of metrics, you don't know whether things are getting better or worse. So that's one of the certain clear reasons why we need gooder. Yeah, we need gooder data and metrics. We also think that the metrics, for the most part, will help build trust in pipeline safety. Because if you start looking very deep in the metrics, what you find out is that things are pretty good for the most part. It also points to places where you may need change. I've been doing quite a bit of reading on how change happens, and one of the things that a lot of people, especially for corporate and government change, think about is that the impetus for change likely comes from by outside change agents. Now, sometimes those can be within a company or agency, but often it comes from the outside, and that's why providing these types of indicators in the background data is so important for the public if you really want to make things better. One of the things we've noticed, and everybody's guilty of this, is too often organizations, whether it's the industry or regulators or the public, you know, selects metrics that support their own beliefs. So that's one of the things. There's so much data out there, you know, it's easy to lie with statistics. So how do we come up with data and indicators that actually tell a true story about pipeline safety versus supporting any one of our own beliefs? And, you know, from the public standpoint, we often see indicators, industry pipeline safety indicators looking like this. We get brochures with people smiling and playing in a park and two thumbs up smiley faces. Government usually only has one thumb up, so it's not quite as enthusiastic about safety and wrapped in government stuff. And then if you look at the public indicators, it always looks like this. And I think that resembles some of the slideshows I've done sometimes. So we all are guilty of kind of using data to support our own thing versus letting the data tell a true story. One of the things when you start looking at data is there's a difference between producing data and producing knowledge. And I think what we're really trying to do with these indicator projects is to produce knowledge and understanding of what's going on with pipelines, not just to try to push out as much information as possible. And as this graph shows, you know, depending on how much information you have, if you don't have any information, you have lots of confusion. And if you have too much information, people can't plow through it and you have confusion. So it's trying to find that sweet spot in the middle. So what are some useful indicators? And we're going to kind of do this interactive since it's after lunch, and I'm going to ask people for thumbs up and moaning and groaning and thumbs down if I do bad, because I'm going to show some indicators we've seen and see what people think and see if there's a difference between the stakeholders in the room. So here's one you often see, and this is 2013 U.S. fatalities from various transportation modes. And it shows pipelines there at the top. 9 people died from pipelines and all kinds of other stuff. You know, private airplanes, 387. Commercial airlines, 15. Automobiles, of course, it's way more dangerous driving here than it was living on top of a pipeline. Is this in any way an interesting indicator? Oh, you people are really bad. Yes, no, huh? Yes. Okay, I think it is too, because I think it at least puts some context in there about what it is we're dealing with. And, you know, we're dealing with, again, a system that is pretty safe, but when things go bad, they can go really, really bad. How about this one? 99.999% of crude oil and petroleum product barrels delivered by pipelines reach their destination. This safety rate makes pipelines one of the safest ways to deliver energy. Yes, no, thumbs up. I see people wiggling. Come on, Jeff. Okay, we got a thumbs down up here. Who likes it? Thumbs up. All right. Well, by the thumbs up and down, I can tell, because this is an industry thing you see lots, and it tends to rub the public the wrong way. This is an accurate number. We've checked the math, and it's accurate. 99.999 does make it safely. Here's what happens to the 0.0001 that doesn't, and that equates to 3.9 million gallons of petroleum products spill from pipelines each year in the U.S. Is that by itself a good indicator? Jeff likes it. The industry people are all going, no. What if you provided them side by side? 99% gets there safely, but boy, that point, the little point that doesn't, amounts to 3.9 million gallons. Is that a fairer indicator? This stuff gets complicated fairly quickly. Here's another one that we got from the industry, and I must admit I can't figure out where they got this one. This says that corrosion-caused pipeline incidents are down 76% since 1999. So Bill Bird explained this one to me after the thing. If this is, you know, if it was explained, context matters too, and there was no context for this. This is pipelines by the numbers from API, AOPL, and all it was the stat, and it didn't explain where it was or what data was being used. So I found it kind of, well, how did they get that? So I went to try to replicate it. People like this type of an indicator if it's explained and accurate? Yes? No? All right, well, when I tried to explain it, I came up with this, because I looked at corrosion failures caused by corrosion, significant failures from 99 to 2014, and to me it looks like corrosion failures are increasing. So they say that down 76%, the PHMSA data shows increasing trend. So there's some kind of a disconnect here between our two measurables that, you know, someone needs to explain. How about, we saw this one today from a number of people. These are serious incidents in the United States. 3 different types of pipelines, distribution being up above, and the hazardous liquid and gas transmission down below. And you can see that certainly there's way more serious incidents on distribution, which makes sense. There's 2.5 million miles more of them than there are other places. But it's a good declining trend line for serious incidents, and serious incidents are defined as deaths or hospitalization. People like this as an indicator? Nobody likes any of this stuff. All right. Pretty small numbers, especially when you're looking at the transmission pipelines. A lot of those are less than 10 a year, which I think is an indicator of something, and the declining trends are good too. And I certainly think that deaths and hospitalizations is something that we ought to be measuring. Here's the same trend lines, but this includes significant incidents, which don't only include deaths and injuries, but also include property damage and the amount spilled. And you can see that the trend lines for hazardous liquid and distribution have gone down for the most part over the last 20 years, and natural gas transmission lines is trending up. So when you include a larger variety of incidents, the graphs change a little bit. The thing that's concerning, especially in hazardous liquid, is the trend line overall is down, but if you look at about the last 8 or 10 years, it seems to be going the wrong way. And even with a natural gas transmission, it tends to be moving up, but this doesn't take into consideration new mileage that has come online, so it's a little bit confusing. But So developing indicators that are particularly meaningful is pretty tough to do because it gets pretty complicated. Thumbs up, thumbs down on this one? Anybody like these types of things? Many of the metrics, certainly the last two that I showed you, measure incidents or accidents, but often there's no context for what that means. The definitions are up there, and then you start arguing about what those definitions are. Lawyers could spend the rest of their lives trying to define what an incident or an accident is. Like just about all of the metrics that people are using include deaths. I think that makes good sense. Why wouldn't you include deaths? So that's a good thing that should be part of a definition of an incident. Injuries probably make sense too, but at what level? Currently, the federal regulations only include if you end up in a hospital. If you don't end up in a hospital, then it doesn't end up. So what level of injury should be included as an incident? You know, everybody says we want to get to 0 incidents, but the definition of incidents is really going to make a difference in whether we get there or not. Spills and leaks are even a bigger headache because how big of a spill do you include? Is a drip on a valve stem an incident? Or 500 gallons, 5,000 gallons? What level do you define it at? Currently, I think it's about 2,100 gallons have to spill before you qualify as an incident in the federal database. Is that too big, too little? Whatever. When we talk about 0 incidents, what number are we using? What about spills anywhere? If you say 0 incidents, if you have a spill in a contained area at a pump station, is that an incident? Or since it was contained, should it not count? And how about natural gas? At this point, natural gas leaks or spills don't count at all as part of an incident. So as we start leaking natural gas, should we be including that when we're talking about measuring incidents? Property damage is another one of these things included in many of these metrics, but again, what level of property damage before it counts? If you do something that causes $5 worth of property damage, is that an incident, or do you have to hit some magic number? Right now it's currently $50,000 before it kicks into the incident database. And whose property? You know, when I look at property damage, I always assume you're talking about private property owners. You know, you've done something and it's damaged their house and you had to pay $50,000. But the way the federal incident data works, it can include the damage to the pipe. If the pipe fails and you have to fix the pipe, if it costs more than $50,000, it's an incident. If you leak oil and it's more than $50,000 worth of oil, even if it doesn't damage private property, it's an incident. So what's included in incident data? Emergency response and cleanup costs are often included in incident data for liquid pipelines, but not for gas, because gas leaks don't count again, or even the cost of lost products. So the property damage is a pretty iffy one. The public often wants to know information specific to their local area, and here's some that we've looked at. On the left there is, we were looking at both crude oil pipelines and non-crude oil product lines in California, because we were doing a project in California. And in the blue, it shows you the number of failures on those 2 types of lines. And in red is in California. And if you look at this, you can see that in California, for some reason, the number of significant incidents is higher, both on crude oil and product lines. And in both instances, crude oil seems to have more incidents than regular products. So that was kind of eye-opening to me, because I'd never split out the different products in hazardous liquid. And crude oil obviously is more of a problem. When we looked at this, it was like, okay, what's going wrong in California? But when we parsed it differently, looking at gallons spilled, what you find out is for both types of pipelines, product here, crude oil here, the U.S. has a much higher spill rate, where California, even though they're having more incidents, is spilling way less gallons per mile of pipeline. So it indicates that there are much smaller spills in California, even though they may be having more incidents. As the public also wants not only local information, they really want information about their local pipeline companies. And that's why I really like what PHMSA is trolling out today, where you can compare not only national averages, but you can look at how individual companies are doing in that. Every time there's a major spill, we get calls about, oh my God, this company A has got to be have the worst spill record in the country. And in reality, sometimes that doesn't pan out. We were doing a project in California, so I'm going to pick on Kinder Morgan here a little bit, because it actually showed that they're doing a pretty good job, contrary to what the local public there thought. So we compared Kinder Morgan's SFPP system in that part of California for significant incidents per mile of pipeline. So we normalized it per mile of pipeline. Here's product pipelines, non-crude product pipelines all over the U.S. California's got a higher rate, but that specific Kinder Morgan pipeline in the Bay Area there is less than half of both of those. So it shows Kinder Morgan is doing something good there. You look over at gallons spilled on both of those. Here's the gallons spilled in the U.S. California, like I showed earlier, has less gallons spilled than the U.S. per incident. And here's the Kinder Morgan pipeline. So, you know, the local government, or the local citizens there really were worried about this pipeline, but when you look at the data, the indicators seem to show that Kinder Morgan seems to be on top of things. There's lots of incident data. You know, here is all the spills that happened in that one county we were working in California. The public's really interested in that. You have to put it in context for them. And then there's also just company-specific data. Here's the same Kinder Morgan system again that runs through the county that was worried about it, and you can see these are all reported incidents over the last 10, 12 years. And you can see that Kinder Morgan drove the number of incidents down considerably over the last that time period. So coming up with data and explaining it to the public is part of the problem. The other thing is providing it on a platform that allows the public to look at what they want to look at and play with the data in a variety of ways and visualize it the way they want to, because we can't always at this point predict where we're going with the data. We've always thought it needs to get integrated in the National Pipeline Mapping System, because the GIS and all the layers will let you integrate some of this stuff, so somebody can poke on a map where they live and get a lot of this information. That's kind of in the works in places. And we also think that you have to move from static indicators to systems that really let people play with the data themselves, because what I might be interested in might not be what they're interested in. And that seems to be the next step that we hear both PHMSA and the regulators and the industry and other places moving toward also. And just to finish up, you know, we'd like some help on doing this data. I see I'm supposed to put some graphics in here. There's supposed to be a guinea pig there in the middle. I think that's what that reminder for me was. I guess the guinea pig didn't make it. Teach me to go eat beignets instead of working on my PowerPoints. But we need some help doing this, because we help citizens all over the country understand the data, and if people have questions, we're glad to help you work through and find the data that PHMSA's put out there, and PHMSA's making it easier all the time too. We're also starting a fairly exciting project with the Canadian Energy Pipeline Association and hopefully the Canadian regulators, both national and provincial, to help provide the public with an easier way to visualize and understand pipeline safety indicators. And a lot of the talk north of the border, I think, where I said they're going to leapfrog us, is they have some pretty highfalutin visions of how they're going to use data and make things available to the public in easy sorts of ways. And we're part of that, and what we're looking for is public people to help test some of those indicators we come up with and help us understand what it is the public's interested in, because what I'm interested in might not be what public in other places are interested in. So if there's anybody that's a data geek or wonk like I am and wants to help on this project over the next 6 months, let me know after the presentation. And that's all I had to say on indicators, kind of from the public standpoint, and we'll get Alan up here and let him explain where PHMSA's been going with all this over the last couple years. Actually, I think it's been in the works.